The message came at midnight, Earth time. It appeared on every screen in the presidential palace at the same moment. The words were cold and formal. The Galactic Senate demanded the presence of Earth's leader. There would be no delay. There would be no excuses. Park Yuna read the message 3 times. She stood by the window of her office, looking at the city lights of New Seoul below. 300 years ago, her ancestors had looked up at these same stars and wondered if anyone was out there. Now she knew the answer. Yes, there were others out there. And most of them hated humanity. Her advisor, Kim Tae-ho, entered the room without knocking. He had served 3 presidents before her. His hair was gray and his face was tired, but his eyes were still sharp. "You have seen it," he said. It was not a question. "I have seen it." Yuna turned away from the window. "The Senate wants to put us on trial." Tae-ho nodded slowly. "They have been planning this for decades. The Veth and the Larathi have finally gathered enough votes. They will demand that we stop expanding. They will lock us inside 3 star systems forever." Yuna walked to her desk. On it sat a small photo frame. The picture showed a young girl standing in the ruins of a bombed city. That girl was Yuna 40 years ago, before she became a soldier, then a general, then a politician. The unification wars had killed her parents. They had also made her strong. "What happens if we refuse?" she asked. "War," Tae-ho answered simply. "They have been looking for a reason to destroy us. If we refuse the Senate's ruling, they will say we are criminals. They will send their fleets." Yuna picked up the photo frame. She looked at the small girl in the picture. That girl had learned one truth very early in life. No one would save her. She had to save herself. "Prepare my ship," Yuna said. "I will go to Nexus Prime." Tae-ho hesitated. "Madam President, the Senate has never ruled in favor of a young species. In 4,000 years, they have always protected the powerful. We cannot win this debate. I know." Yuna set the photo down gently. "But I will not hide. I will not send someone else to speak for humanity. If they want to judge us, they will look me in the eyes while they do it." The diplomatic vessel Morning Star launched 2 days later. It was a small ship, built for speed and comfort, not for battle. Yuna watched Earth grow smaller through the observation window. Blue oceans, green forests, white clouds. This tiny world had created a species that refused to die. The journey to Nexus Prime took 11 days. Yuna spent most of that time reading. She read about the Veth Dominion and their 1,000-year empire. She read about the Larathi Collective and their strange crystalline bodies that communicated through light. She read about the Galactic Senate and its long history of crushing any species that grew too fast. Humanity had committed one unforgivable crime. They had survived. When the first alien ships visited Earth 3 centuries ago, they expected to find primitives. They found cities and machines and nuclear weapons. They found a species that had already traveled to its own moon. The aliens offered trade and technology. They also offered warnings. Expand too quickly, and there would be consequences. Humanity did not listen. Humanity never listened. Within 100 years, humans spread to dozens of star systems. They built colonies on frozen moons and burning deserts. They terraformed dead worlds into gardens. They mined asteroids and built space stations. The galaxy watched with growing fear. They breed too fast, the Veth complained in the Senate. Halls, they take too much, the Larathi agreed. They must be stopped. Everyone decided . And so the summons came. Kim Tae-ho found Yuna in the ship's small gym on the 8th day of travel. She was hitting a punching bag with steady, powerful strikes. Sweat ran down her face. She did not stop when he entered. "I have received a private message," Tae-ho said, "from Admiral Choi Suho." Yuna caught the bag and held it still. What does he want? He wants to know if you need backup. Yuna smiled. It was not a warm smile. How many ships does he have? 142. The entire First Fleet. They can reach Nexus Prime within hours of your signal. Yuna thought about this for a long moment. Bringing warships to a diplomatic meeting was dangerous. It could start a war. But going alone was also dangerous. The Senate might decide to make an example of Earth's president. Tell him to wait, Yuna finally said. Tell him to stay hidden until I call. Taiho bowed his head. And if you do not call, then you will know I am dead, and humanity is at war anyway. The Morning Star arrived at Nexus Prime on the 11th day. The station was enormous, a wheel of metal and light spinning slowly against the stars. Thousands of ships surrounded it. Vessels from hundreds of species, all gathered to watch humanity's judgment. Yuna dressed carefully for the occasion. She wore a simple black suit with no medals or decorations. She wanted to look like what she was, a human being, nothing more. Nothing less. As she walked to the airlock, Taiho stopped her with a hand on her arm. What will you say to them? He asked. Yuna looked at the massive station through the airlock window. Somewhere inside that structure, the galaxy's oldest and most powerful beings waited to condemn her species. I will tell them the truth, she said quietly. And then we will see if the truth is enough. The airlock opened. Yuna stepped forward into the cold light of Nexus Prime. Behind her, the Morning Star waited. Beyond the stars, Admiral Choi Suho and his hidden fleet waited. And on Earth, 8 billion humans waited without knowing that their future would be decided in the next few hours. President Park Yuna was not afraid. She had been afraid once as a child in the ruins. She had used up all her fear long ago. Now there was only duty. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Senate was built to make visitors feel small. The ceiling rose so high that clouds of vapor drifted near the top. The walls curved inward like the inside of a giant egg. Thousands of seats filled the space in rising circles, and in those seats sat the representatives of 400 species. Park Yuna walked down the central path alone. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Every eye, every sensor, every optical device turned toward her. She felt the weight of their attention like a physical force pressing against her chest. The petitioner's platform waited at the center of the chamber. It was a small circle of plain metal, barely wide enough for one person to stand. Above it, floating in the air, was the speaker's throne where Overseer Calith of the Veth Dominion sat watching her approach. Calith was old, even by Veth standards. His scales had faded from bright green to pale gray. His eyes were yellow and cold, like 2 chips of ancient ice. He had led the Veth Dominion for over 200 years. He had destroyed civilizations. He had ended species. And now he looked at Yuna the way a snake looks at a mouse. The human has arrived, Calith announced. His voice was deep and carried easily through the chamber. Let the proceedings begin. Yuna stepped onto the petitioner's platform. She stood straight with her hands at her sides. She did not bow. A ripple of whispers spread through the chamber. Every other petitioner in history had bowed to the speaker. This small human woman simply stood there, meeting Calith's eyes without fear. The Larthi delegate, Prism Voice Eulith, shimmered with disapproval. The Larthi had no solid bodies. They were beings of living crystal that communicated through patterns of colored light. Right now, Eulith was flashing deep reds and purples, colors that meant anger and contempt. We will read the charges, Calith said, ignoring the insult of Yuna's stance. Humanity is accused of unauthorized expansion into 17 star systems. Humanity is accused of terraforming 6 worlds without Senate approval. Humanity is accused of building military vessels in numbers that exceed their assigned limit. Humanity is accused of refusing to share technology with elder races as required by treaty. Each accusation brought sounds of agreement from the assembled delegates. Clicking, humming, growling, flashing. 400 species expressing their anger at humanity's crimes. Yuna remained silent. She watched and waited. The evidence is clear, Caliph continued. The violations are documented. The Senate has deliberated for 3 years. We have reached a decision. He paused for effect. The chamber fell completely silent. Humanity will be contained, Caliph declared. Your species will withdraw from all colonies beyond your original 3 systems. Your fleet will be reduced to defense vessels only. Your population growth will be monitored and controlled. These terms are not negotiable. They are not suggestions. They are commands. Prism voice Eulith added more light patterns to the air. Containment is mercy. We could choose extinction instead. Your species should be grateful. More sounds of agreement filled the chamber. Delegates from a dozen races called for even harsher punishment. Some wanted humanity's technology taken away. Some wanted human worlds occupied by Senate forces. Some simply wanted humans gone. Yuna listened to it all. Her face showed nothing in the observation deck high above the chamber floor. Kim Taiho watched with growing despair. Beside him stood Admiral Choi Suho, who had arrived on a small shuttle just before the proceedings began. Suho was a tall man with a soldier's posture and a soldier's patience. They have already decided, Taiho whispered. This is just a show. I know, Suho replied. The fleet is ready. One word from her, and we appear. And then what? We fight the entire galaxy? Suho's jaw tightened. If we must. Below them, Overseer Caliph was finishing his speech. The human delegate may now respond. She may accept the Senate's ruling and return to her people with peace. Or she may reject it and face the consequences. Every being in the chamber leaned forward. They expected tears. They expected pleading. They expected this young species to finally understand its place in the galaxy. Park Yuna took a slow breath. Then she spoke. I have a question. Her voice was calm and clear. The translators carried it to every ear in the chamber. Callous eyes narrowed. You may ask. You have called us criminals, Yuna said. You have listed our crimes. But I want to understand something. When the Veth Dominion conquered the Outer Rim 3,000 years ago, was that a crime? Silence. When the Larathi Collective absorbed 12 species into their network without consent, was that a crime? More silence. Eulith's lights flickered with uncertainty. When this Senate ordered the destruction of the Karath homeworld because they developed weapons too quickly, was that a crime? Caliph's scales flushed with color. Those actions were different. How? Yuna asked simply. How are they different? We are elder races, Caliph growled. We have the right to maintain order. We have the right to protect the galaxy from dangerous species. Dangerous species, Yuna repeated. You mean species like us? Species that grow too fast. Species that will not accept limits placed on them by others. Yes, Yuna nodded slowly. Then let me tell you about dangerous species. She raised her hand, and a holographic display activated around her. Images filled the air above the petitioner's platform. Images of Earth. Images of humanity's history. This is where we come from, Yuna said. This small blue world tried to kill us many times. Ice ages froze our ancestors. Plagues killed millions. Volcanoes blocked out the sun. And still we survived. The images shifted. Wars, bombs, cities burning. We even tried to kill ourselves. Many times. We built weapons that could destroy our entire world. We used some of them. We came close to ending everything more than once. New images appeared. Rockets launching, astronauts walking on the moon, colony ships heading toward distant stars. But we did not end. We survived. We learned. We grew. And finally, we reached the stars. She turned slowly, looking at the delegates surrounding her. You call us dangerous because we will not stop growing. You are right. We will not stop. We cannot stop. Growth is what we are. It is how we survived everything that tried to destroy us. Yuna's voice hardened. You offer us containment or extinction. Those are not choices. Those are different kinds of death. And humanity does not accept death. Caliph leaned forward in his floating throne. Then you reject the Senate's ruling? Yuna met his ancient eyes. I reject your authority to make such a ruling. The chamber exploded into chaos. The chaos lasted for several minutes. Delegates screamed in their various languages. Some called for guards to remove the human. Others demanded immediate military action. The Veth representatives hissed threats while the Lorthi flashed angry colors. Species that had not spoken in centuries shouted at each other across the chamber. Park. Yuna stood still at the center of the storm. She waited. Overseer Caliph raised one clawed hand, and slowly the noise faded. His yellow eyes burned with cold fury as he looked down at the human woman who had dared to challenge the Senate's authority. You speak boldly for someone who stands alone, Caliph said. Your species is young. Your fleet is small. Your worlds are few. What makes you believe you can reject the will of this chamber? Yuna looked up at him without flinching. May I continue my presentation? Caliph gestured with contempt. Speak your last words, human. They will not save you. Yuna raised her hand again. New images appeared in the air around her. But these were not images of Earth. They showed the stars themselves and the lines of travel between them. Every species in this chamber reached space through gift, Yuna began. The elder races found you. They lifted you up. They gave you starships and technology. They taught you how to survive among the stars. She pointed at the Veth section of the chamber. The Veth were given faster-than-light travel by the architects, 300,000 years ago. She pointed at the Lorthi. The Lorthi received their first colony ships from the Veth themselves in exchange for territorial agreements. Her hand swept across the entire chamber. Every species here can trace their technology back to gifts from those who came before. Someone always helped you take your first step into the darkness. Yuna lowered her hand. Her voice became quieter, but it carried to every corner of the massive room. No one helped humanity. The words hung in the air. We looked up at the stars and wondered what they were. We studied them with simple glass lenses. We built mathematics to understand their movements. We dreamed of reaching them for thousands of years before we had any hope of actually doing it. New images appeared. Early rockets exploding on launch pads. Astronauts dying in fires. Ships lost in the void. The long, painful history of human space exploration. We failed more times than we succeeded. We killed ourselves trying. We spent resources we did not have. We sacrificed lives we could not afford to lose. And still, we kept trying. The chamber was silent now. Even Caliph seemed caught by her words. When your ancestors found Earth, they expected to find primitives, Yuna continued. They found us already walking on our moon. They found us already building stations in orbit. They found us already dreaming of Mars and beyond. We had done all of this alone, with no help, with no guidance, with nothing but our own determination. She paused, looking at the faces around her. Some showed anger. Some showed confusion. A few, in the distant corners of the chamber, showed something else. Something like recognition. You ask what makes us dangerous. Yuna's voice hardened. We are dangerous because we earned our place among the stars. We did not receive it as a gift. We took it with our own hands, with our own minds, with our own will. And we will never let anyone take it away from us. Callous scales rippled with barely controlled rage. Pretty words. But words do not stop weapons. Words do not match the power of this Senate. You are right, Yuna agreed. Words are not enough. So let me tell you what else humanity brings to this discussion. She clasped her hands behind her back. Her posture shifted from defensive to commanding. She looked like what she truly was, a soldier who had fought her way up from nothing. In 300 years, we have colonized 47 worlds. We have terraformed 6 planets from dead rocks into living gardens. We have built a fleet of 2,000 vessels. We have developed weapons that your scientists say should not be possible. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The numbers were known, but hearing them spoken aloud by a human was somehow different. More threatening. We did all of this while your Senate placed limits on our technology. We did this while your inspectors watched our shipyards. We did this while your spies reported our every movement. Yuna smiled slightly. Imagine what we could do without those limits. Caliph leaned back in his throne. For the first time, something other than contempt appeared in his eyes. It might have been caution. You threaten us? He asked. No. Yuna shook her head. I am explaining reality. Humanity does not threaten. We simply do not stop. We do not give up. We do not accept limits that others place upon us. This is not a choice we make. This is who we are. She turned to address the entire chamber once more. I know many of you fear us. I understand. We are strange to you. We grow too fast, breathe too quickly, think too differently. But fear is a poor reason to destroy a species. Fear is what animals feel. You claim to be civilized beings. Act like it. A delegate from the back of the chamber called out. What do you want, human? What would satisfy your species? Yuna considered the question carefully before answering. We want what every species wants. Room to grow. Freedom to explore. The right to make our own mistakes and learn from them. We do not want to conquer you. We do not want to replace you. We simply want to exist on our own terms as equal members of this galaxy. Impossible, Prism Voice Woolith flashed. Young species cannot be trusted with such freedom. History proves this. History proves that you crush any species that might one day challenge you, Yuna replied. That is not wisdom. That is fear wearing the mask of wisdom. She looked directly at Caliph. The Veth were young once. The Lorathi were young once. Every elder race in this chamber was young once. You grew. You expanded. You made mistakes. And eventually, you became what you are now. Why should humanity be denied that same chance? Caliph's answer was cold and final. Because we will not allow it. Yuna nodded slowly. She had expected this answer. She had prepared for it. Then, we have nothing more to discuss, she said calmly. Call your vote. The voting took less than an hour. One by one, the delegations recorded their decisions. Lights appeared above each section of the chamber, red for containment, green for freedom. The red spread like blood across the curved walls. Park Yuna watched without expression. Beside her holographic display, a counter tracked the results. The numbers climbed steadily against humanity. 300. 320. 340. Kim Taeho gripped the railing of the observation deck so hard his knuckles turned white. Admiral Choi Suho stood motionless beside him, but his hand rested on the communicator in his pocket. It is over, Taeho whispered. Not yet, Suho replied. On the chamber floor, small pockets of green appeared among the red. The avian Karethi voted for humanity. Their feathered forms shifted with visible discomfort as their neighbors hissed disapproval. The aquatic Molway speaking through translation spheres filled with water, also voted green. A few other minor species joined them, species that had themselves been pushed aside by the elder races. 12 votes for humanity, 347 against. Overseer Calith announced the result with obvious satisfaction. The Senate has spoken. Humanity will be contained. Your species has 30 standard days to begin withdrawal from all unauthorized territories. Failure to comply will result in military enforcement. He looked down at Yuna with something close to pity. You may return to your people now, human. Tell them what has happened here. Tell them that resistance is pointless. Tell them that their only hope is obedience. Yuna did not move from the petitioner's platform. I said you may leave, Calith repeated, his voice growing cold. I heard you, Yuna replied. But I have not finished speaking. Confusion rippled through the chamber. The vote was complete. The proceedings were over. Why was this human still standing there? The Galactic Senate has made its decision, Yuna said, her voice carrying clearly through the massive space. Now hear humanity's decision. She raised her right-hand dot in the observation deck. Admiral Suho pressed the button on his communicator. A single encrypted signal flashed across space, moving faster than light, reaching ships that had been waiting in the darkness between stars for 3 heartbeats. Nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to tear open. Beyond the transparent walls of Nexus Prime, the stars suddenly had company. Ships appeared from nowhere, massive carriers, sleek destroyers, bristling weapons platforms. They materialized in perfect formation, their running lights blazing against the darkness. The flagship Sol's Fire led them, a mountain of metal and power that dwarfed every other vessel near the station. 142 ships. The entire First Fleet of United Earth. They had been hiding just outside sensor range, waiting for this moment. The Grand Chamber erupted into panic. Delegates screamed and ran for exits. Guards drew weapons they had no idea how to use against threats in space. Calith's throne dropped from its floating position as he lost focus. The Lorthi flashed every color at once, their crystalline bodies vibrating with shock. Alarms filled the air. The station's own defenses powered up, but the human fleet made no aggressive moves. They simply hung there in the void, visible through every window, their presence impossible to ignore. Yuna lowered her hand. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade through water. We did not bring these ships to threaten you. The noise began to fade. Slowly, fearfully, delegates returned to their seats. All eyes fixed on the small human woman who had somehow summoned a fleet from empty space. We brought them to remind you, Yuna continued. Humanity does not bluff. We do not make threats we cannot keep. When we say we will not accept containment, we mean it. When we say we will fight for our freedom, we mean it. Calith had recovered enough to speak. His voice shook with rage. This is an act of war. You have brought weapons to a diplomatic station. Every law of the Senate has been violated. We have broken no laws, Yuna replied calmly. Our ships have not crossed the boundary line. They have not powered weapons. They are simply present, just as your fleets are present in systems across the galaxy. Just as Veth warships orbit every world you wish to intimidate. She stepped forward, and something in her movement made even Calith draw back slightly. The difference is that we do not hide our strength. We do not pretend to be peaceful while positioning weapons behind our words. Humanity is here. This is what we look like. This is what threatens to look like. Prism Voice Eulith finally found their voice. You cannot challenge the entire galaxy. Your fleet is impressive, but we have thousands of ships. Millions. You would be destroyed. Perhaps, Yuna agreed. But how many of you would die first? How many worlds would burn? How many species would lose their fleets fighting humans who refuse to surrender? She let the question hang in the air. Humanity has faced extinction before. We walked through fire to reach the stars. We are not afraid of death. But I wonder, are you? The chamber fell completely silent. In that silence, Una spoke the words that would echo through history. Humanity does not negotiate its survival. Your containment order is rejected. Your threats are noted. And your Senate's authority over Earth ends today. She turned to leave. Her footsteps echoed in the stillness. Caliph found his voice. If you walk out that door, there will be war. Una paused. She looked back over her shoulder at the ancient Veth leader. Then there will be war, she said simply. And you will learn what humanity truly is. Not a species to be contained. Not a problem to be solved. We are what happens when you push creatures into a corner and give them no choice but to fight. She resumed walking. Behind her, Caliph gave a command in the Veth language. Somewhere outside the station, a Veth warship that had been hiding among the diplomatic vessels began powering its weapons. Its captain had orders from the overseer himself stopped the human president from leaving. Make an example. Admiral Suho saw the power signature spike on his displays. He did not hesitate. Target that ship, he ordered. 1 round. Disable, do not destroy. The Soul's fire responded. A single railgun slug crossed the distance in less than a second. It struck the Veth warship's engine section with surgical precision, crippling the vessel instantly. The first shot of what would become the War of Open Stars had been fired, and humanity had fired it. The crippled Veth warship drifted slowly away from Nexus Prime. Its lights flickered and died. Emergency signals pulsed weakly into the void. Inside the grand chamber, every delegate stared at the wounded vessel through the transparent walls. No one spoke. No one moved. Park Una had stopped walking. She stood near the exit, watching the same sight as everyone else. The first shot. She had known it might come to this. She had prepared for it. But knowing and seeing were different things. Overseer Caliph broke the silence. His voice was barely a whisper, but the chamber's acoustics carried it to every ear. You have started a war. Una turned to face him one final time. No. You started this war 300 years ago when you decided humanity was too dangerous to live. We are simply finishing it. She walked out of the grand chamber. The doors closed behind her with a soft hiss. In the observation deck, Kim Taiho collapsed into a chair. His hands were shaking. Admiral Choi Suho stood at the window, watching the human fleet maintain their perfect formation. What happens now? Taiho asked. Suho's face was hard as stone. Now we go home. We prepare. And we fight. The journey back to Earth took 11 days. During that time, messages flooded in from across the galaxy. The Veth Dominion declared total war on humanity. The Larathi Collective pledged full support for the elder races. Dozens of other species announced they would join the fight against the human threat. But other messages came too. Secret messages. Encrypted signals from species that had stayed silent during the vote. Species that had their own reasons to hate the Senate. The Karathi offered alliance. Their avian warriors had been waiting for someone to stand against the Veth for centuries. The Molway joined them, bringing their vast underwater shipyards to humanity's cause. The insectoid Vralith, who had been denied Senate membership for 1,000 years, sent word that they would fight beside any species brave enough to challenge the old order. By the time Una reached Earth, humanity was no longer alone. She addressed her people from the steps of the presidential palace in New Seoul. Billions watched on screens across dozens of worlds. Her words were simple and direct. The galaxy has given us a choice. Submit or die. We choose neither. We choose to fight. We choose to win. We choose to make a future where no species decides another's fate. The war lasted 11 years. It was not an easy war. Humanity lost colonies. Humans died by the millions. There were dark moments when the Elder Fleet seemed unstoppable, when Earth itself came under threat. Admiral Suho gave his life defending the colony at New Bizin, buying time for evacuation with his own ship. But humanity did not stop. They never stopped. They fought in the asteroid belts of the Outer Rim. They fought in the ice fields of the galactic edge. They fought in the burning atmosphere of gas giants and on the frozen surfaces of dead moons. Wherever the war took them, humans adapted. They learned. They invented new weapons and new tactics. They turned every disadvantage into a weapon. And slowly, impossibly, they began to win. The Veth Dominion was the first to fall. Their 1,000-year empire crumbled from within. A species they had conquered for millennia rose up against them. The Larathi collective fragmented when their central network was destroyed. One by one, the great powers of the Galactic Senate collapsed. Overseer Caliph died in the final battle of Nexus Prime. The station where he had once judged humanity became his tomb. Some said he cursed the humans with his dying breath. Others said he finally understood what he had awakened. The Treaty of Open Passage was signed in the ruins of the Grand Chamber. The Galactic Senate was dissolved forever. In its place rose the Allied Confederation of Free Species, a new government built on equality rather than power. Any species could join. Any species could leave. No one would be contained. No one would be controlled. The treaty required a leader. The delegates from 200 species, many of them former enemies, agreed on only one name, Park Yuna. She refused 3 times. She had led humanity through the war. She was tired. She wanted to go home, to walk in the forests of Earth, to see the mountains where her ancestors had once lived. But Kin Tai-ho, old and gray now, convinced her in the end. "You started this," he said with a small smile. "You should see it finished." Yuna became the first Secretary General of the Allied Confederation. She served for 20 years, guiding the new government through its difficult early days. She built institutions that would outlast her. She created laws that protected the weak from the strong. She made sure that what had happened to humanity could never happen to another young species. When she finally retired, she returned to Earth. She built a small house in the mountains near what had once been called Korea. She lived quietly, tending a garden, watching the stars at night. Visitors came sometimes. Delegates from distant worlds who wanted to meet the woman who had changed everything. She welcomed them all with tea and simple food and stories of the old days. One visitor, a young Kurethi diplomat, asked her the question everyone wanted to ask. "Were you afraid? When you stood before the Senate, when you rejected their ruling, when you knew war was coming, were you afraid?" Yuna thought about it for a long time. She looked out the window at the stars that humanity had once reached for with such desperate hope. "I was afraid," she finally admitted. "But I was more afraid of what would happen if I did nothing. Fear can make you weak, or it can make you strong. I chose strong." The Kurethi nodded slowly. "Is that the secret? Is that why humanity won?" Yuna smiled. It was the same smile she had worn in the Grand Chamber all those years ago. Humanity did not win because we were strong. We won because we refused to accept that we were weak. Every species in the galaxy told us we were small, we were young, we were nothing. We did not listen. We never listen. She picked up her teacup and looked at the distant stars. That is what humanity is. Not the smartest species, not the strongest, not the oldest. Just the ones who will not stop. The ones who will not kneel. The ones who will burn everything, including themselves, rather than accept a cage. She drank her tea. The galaxy heard a shot that day. They thought it was the sound of war. They were wrong. It was the sound of a door opening. a door that can never be closed again. Far above, among the stars that humans had once only dreamed of reaching, ships bearing the flag of the Allied Confederation traveled freely through space. Karathi flew beside Molway. Raylath traded with former enemies. And human children were born on worlds their grandparents had never imagined. The cage was empty. Humanity had left it behind.